Today I'm installing network load balancing on Windows Server 2012. NLB is a feature in Windows Server, and I'll install it through Server Manager.
Teresa? Okay. Teresa, I have you bridged with Tony. He's our NACR engineer who is opening up a ticket out to Avaya for the CMS.
Skip over server roles,
As of right now,
and on the feature selection pane, select network load balancing and any dependencies it requires.
any answers for you. Kenny's out sick today. Tom is not here.
I have two web servers, Web 1 and Web 2, which will be part of the cluster, and I have already installed NLB on those servers. Hosts in an NLB cluster should have two interfaces. One interface is for management, and the other is to participate in NLB. On my NLB interface, I've disabled Client for Microsoft Networks. Now that the installation is complete, I'll configure network load balancing.
Want to get me in a consult? You're welcome to do so.
To create a new cluster, I right-click on Network Load Balancing Clusters and pick New Cluster. For the host IP address, I'm entering the management IP for my Web 1 server. The wizard finds both interfaces on the remote machine. I'm using Ethernet 2 for NLB. Ethernet is used for management. I select Ethernet 2 and click Next. Now I need to specify a cluster IP address.
Okay, so Teresa, with Tim and Tony on the line, let me ask you this very clearly.
This is the IP that other hosts in the network will connect to access clustered resources. On the cluster parameters pane, I need to select multicast.
Okay, so
On the port rules pane, the default is to forward every port. I only want web services, so I remove the default rule. Then I create a new rule for port 80. I'm going to change the affinity to none. I'll cover affinity again in a later post. And I do the same for port 443.
Yeah, because with the observations right now, this should be an all or nothing deal. Tony, please stay on. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you.
I'm going to add the second server to the cluster, and the process is the same. Pick Add Host to Cluster,
Yes, I'm here.
enter the management IP for the node,
As a customer chart here, as a customer anyway, it says that
select the NLB interface,
go up would be Valerie Stanford or Geoff Johnson or Ken Hurd. That's 4, 5.
Now both nodes are added to the cluster. I'll test them from my domain controller.
And the second is my desk, which in theory, using via 1X, should forward to my cell, which is 305 406 5858.
I created a sample demo PHP script that just echoes the name of the web server out to the browser. So on Web 1, it tells me I'm connected to Web 1. And on Web 2, I get Web 2.
Yeah,
Now if I use the cluster IP address, right now I'm being directed to Web 2.
okay, so I won't.
If I go to the console, and I'm not going to drain stop because it's not in production. I'll just stop Web 2 Web 2 is stopped and it's been removed from load. And I go back to the domain controller and refresh. And now NLB directs me to Web 1.